How can you tell that? Okay. Would you like fries with that? Hello. So, hello, and welcome to the Kosher class, where we talk about kosher and all things kosher. um, I am coming to you from Richmond, Virginia tonight. I had a crazy day, a really crazy day of dealing with my kids and teaching. And I came immediately home from teaching. I rushed home. I asked my husband on the way home from teaching to warm up some water so I could throw some pasta on the stove so that I could get in here and and eat because I was starving. And so rereading over tonight's material proved very interesting because it really had to do with what I experienced tonight. Like, I was so hungry, I didn't even care. I was like, I'm gonna eat this pasta. I don't even care what it tastes like. I just need to eat something because I'm starving because I hadn't eaten pretty much the whole day. So, tonight's class is all about is more actually of the spiritual aspects of kosher. I know Sharon had said that she was interested in learning more, and it just so happened that this week it fell out that we would be studying this. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it, and I am actually going to refer to the book. Um, I'm going to start on chapter 4, page 82, and I'm going to go to about page 104. Hopefully we'll get that far, because this is a very deep, very intense sort of thing he's talking about here. And it's again, it's the relationship of food and spirituality in a Jewish context. And it's pretty major. So let's talk. um, food is not so simple. And he actually, especially for Jews, and he actually opens up this chapter with talking about comedian Jackie Mason saying that, like, Gentiles, if you're with Gentiles socially, they're like, oh, you want a drink? Can I get you something to drink? Can I get you something to drink? Whereas if you're at a Jewish social function, everyone's like, oh, did you eat? Are you eating? Do you want something to eat? So, hold on, let me fix that light. It's just a little bit crazy. Hold on. Okay, I think that's better. I think that's better. So, Jews are just, how do I say that? Like, they're like intrinsically obsessed with food. And that is no coincidence, okay? So, if you think about the creation story, what? Sweetheart, I can't help you right now, okay? Basically, if you go back to the Garden of Eden, God creates man and woman, and the first thing he does is, like, he talks to them and he says, hey, I gave you trees with vegetation, I gave you fields with vegetation. You can eat all of the stuff that I made for you. And then, like, immediately 2 seconds later, he says, P.S. don't eat of this one tree. So, in a very basic and fundamental way, it was like the first kosher law to say, like, you can have whatever you want. Look at all this food. It's amazing. It's just for you. But P.S. this one tree, don't eat it. Okay? Um, it's a prime. Rabbi Apisdorf says it's so sweet. The story of man's relationship with God begins with a primordial command to keep kosher, in the very basic sense that some foods were permitted and some were not. And it's very basic, this, that there is there's all this food they could eat, but this one tree they can't. Okay. Man's relationship to food before eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge and after eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge is totally separate, and it could not be more different. Before eating of the fruit, food was a very effortless task. Acquiring food, it just sort of, I don't want to say, I mean, figuratively, just sort of fell into their mouths. It was, they didn't have to work for it. And it says even in the midrash that, I think it's a midrash. Anyway, no, the Talmud, that Adam and Eve had their food prepared by the angels. Hold on one second. Ziggy, listen to me. Mommy's right now teaching in class, okay? I will rip this out for you. But if you need anything else, you need to go ask Tati. He's outside, okay? I love you. Sorry. My duty called. So, yeah, the very first negative mitzvah was a food law. Very good point, Laser Wolf. So before eating the fruit, it was like very effortless. They could just eat whatever. The angels were preparing all this amazing food. There was no like stuff to cut away. There was no seeds or chaff or anything. It was like perfect fruit where you just like ate it. You didn't have to peel it, nothing. It just fell into your mouth. It was super delicious, or everything was just edible. And then after they ate of the fruit, everything became like work. Okay? You had to reap the wheat and sow it and reap it and take care of all the chaff and junk and process it and then make flour. Like, it's even besides for earning the money to be able to buy food in and of itself became more difficult. So Rebbe Apisdorf, I'm going to read straight from the book here because he puts it so beautifully and I don't want to mess it up. So he says, something very deep is being alluded to here. The first human beings were people who were so profoundly in touch with their souls that the way they related to their bodies was similar to the way that we relate to our pajamas. We need to have pajamas. It's important to have pajamas, but we don't really think about them. To Adam and Eve, their souls and the intense awareness of God were the essence and the focus of their lives. They lived and breathed godliness in everything they did, and the physical world they inhabited reflected this. They were such genuinely spiritual people that they barely even noticed that they had physical needs at all. So, like, even though they had physical needs, it was, like, sort of secondary. I mean, their spiritual needs were very, very central. And then after the fruit being eaten, it was like, that's it. Now your physical needs are good. He's outside, sweetheart. Go outside and yell, Tati. After that, it was like, now the physical is really, really more predominant. And this spiritual sort of faded into the background. Everyone's obsessed with their spiritual needs. What do you need help with? You want this? Okay, you want this ripped out? I know, Tati's outside. Okay, I don't know where he's at. Okay, cutie, go color. Go color. So, okay. So it wasn't a really clear thing after the eating of the fruit that life's highest values and goals were straight up there. It was like sort of gray. The body was simply there before the eating of the fruit to lend a helping hand to the soul, where afterwards it was sort of like, was almost dominant. The soul and the body are forever vying for attention. Our souls want to pull us towards godliness. What? Towards being kind, towards being compassionate, towards helping others, towards all of that good stuff. Whereas our bodies are our souls are pulling us towards godliness. Our bodies are pulling us towards, like, when can I caffeinate next? Or like today, I can't wait to get home and put that pasta in my mouth because I'm starving. So that's sort of the difference of before the eating of the fruit, and the after. Okay. Eating food was the vehicle through which the world lost its way, and food and eating are essential and central to repairing the damage. Now we're going to get into the Kabbalistic sense of this whole situation and kosher. Okay, so the Hebrew term for cosmic repair, for eternal repair, is tikkun. Okay, and you hear all the time people talk about tikkun olam, and it's basically, they're just saying, they're referring to making things right. The process of tikkun underlies the Jewish relationship to food. All the food in the world before the eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil was suited for the needs of people who were living a totally sublime spiritual life. Today, a lot of our food has that dimension, but it also has junk in it, junk that we have to get through. Everything that's good in food, according to Kabbalah, is referred to as tov, or good, and everything that is not good, the junk, really, they call ra, or bad. Food can embolden our physicality and dull our deepest yearnings, which is not good, which is ra, or it can elevate us and want us to be more spiritual people, which is tov. And we'll get into this on a much deeper level later in the class. So before we can restore spirituality to its proper place in the world, we must first restore it to its proper place in our own lives. And for that to happen, one of the most important skills we have to learn is how to eat. And that is keeping kosher. Okay, before I go on to this whole Kabbalistic explanation of the stuff, I'm going to fix my camera real quick. I want to tell you that I read an amazing article from Sarah Rigler, who, if you've never read her book Holy Women, right now go on artscroll.com and order it, or maybe it's Felltime, I'm not sure who publishes it, but it's an incredible book, and it's really, really reveals, the secrets of chesed. So Sarah Rigler herself is an amazing person. She spent 15 years living on an ashram, meditating, and so on and so forth, living a communal lifestyle. And there's that light still bothering me. And in this article that I read, and if you want to email me, I'm happy to send you the article because it's really actually very incredible. If you have, 20 minutes of your time, it's really worth reading. So she speaks about being in the ashram, and she's worked so hard all of these years. I mean, she was in her like 30s, so 15 years is like half of her life. She had worked so hard to achieve this like enlightened state of meditation, and that when she finally achieved it, it was like an all-day thing where she was just, floating around, and she had achieved this transcendental state that she wanted to achieve through meditation. It had taken her years, and she finally did it. Like, sort of when it was over and she was sort of quote-unquote coming down, one of the people who worked there came over and they were like, "Oh, Sister Sarah, can you make sure that I don't have kitchen duty on Tuesday night because I got something else to do?" And she was like, "Wait a minute, can you not talk to me about this, because I was just on this super spiritual high level." Shh! No. I was on this super spiritual high level, and now you're going to talk to me about the kitchen duty? Like, and she says in this article, the difference is that the difference between other religions and Judaism, what? Other religions want to bring spirituality into the world. That the world's they want to bring it down. Whereas Judaism, we want to lift this world up and make it spiritual. Judaism is all about deeds, about actions, about mitzvahs, about objects, about, this world, but being elevated to a higher and holier plane. Yeah, actually, Laser Wolf mentions this lady who I talked about, who's in the ashram. She is now a very, very religious lady. She was always Jewish. She became religious after, after a rabbi came and visited the ashram. And she's a really incredible author and a really incredible Jew, and she's like very inspiring. So her name is Sarah Yocheved Rigler. If you ever want to look up her book, she wrote Holy Woman, and she's a phenomenal speaker also. Yeah, she's a religious Jew now after living in this ashram. It's funny, in this article that I'm talking about, she says that at this there's an ashram in India, and like most of the street signs around there are written in Hebrew because there's so many Jews, and especially Israelis who are there. And the whole purpose of the article is to talk about the Jewish phenomenon of like Jew-boos, like people who are Jewish but they get into Buddhism or some other sort of transcendental, or Eastern religions, because they're looking for religion and they don't realize it's right in their own backyard. And she is amazing at expressing this because she lived through it. So I highly recommend you look her up. But anyway, that's the concept, is that we need to, in Judaism, bring this world up to spiritual levels, not bringing the spirituality down into this world. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Okay, so the Kabbalistic synonym for Tov, which means good, is Or, which means light. Now remember that in Kabbalah, light and dark don't mean light like this light that's shining in your eyeballs behind me. It doesn't mean like the light switch that you turn on and off, or even the sun that's, out during the day and not out at night. It's something very, very deep and something really beyond our understanding. So Kabbalah, the whole thing about Kabbalah is trying to break up spiritual things that can't be determined or can't be compartmentalized in terms that we can understand, and to try to do that, to make it into terms that we can understand, which is it's a crazy task. And that's why a lot of people don't study Kabbalah, because it's very, very difficult, and it's like it almost makes your brain like want to cry. But okay, so we're talking about Or, which is the Tov, the goodness, the light, and Choshech, which is the antonym to that. It's darkness, it's Ra, it's bad. Okay, and again, those are just buzzwords. We're really talking about something much deeper than light, darkness, good, and bad. Okay. So the mystical writings teach the singular, fundamental raw material for creation is Or light. And this is imbued in the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Okay? This is how, these are the tools that Hashem used to create the universe. Okay, but man has something very, very important. His role in creation is very, very important. It says the mission and the opportunity that Adam and Eve were given was to add to the light of creation. Instead of bringing the light to the world, they ushered in an era of darkness. And again, it's not so simple, light and dark. You could say it's a gray area. They made a fundamental change. Whereas their original job was to help add to the light of creation. Now they made it so that mankind had to fix the darkness. Okay? So this whole world is in need of tikkun, or repair. Okay, so the Or Chaim HaKadosh, Rabbi Apisdorf brings up his book, and it's an amazing book. It's a Kabbalistic interpretation of the Chumash, or the 5 books of the Torah, and it's divided up into parshiyas, just like the weekly portion that we read, and it's really, really incredible. I don't know if there's an English translation of it. I would be surprised if there weren't, but really, really, really amazing sefer. My husband and I learn it every Friday night by our Shabbos dinner table. And again, we'll talk about Torah and food in a minute. Learning Torah and food. Okay, so the Or Chaim notes here. Oh, he gives a little background about Rabbi Chaim ben Attar living in Morocco during the first half of the 18th century before he went to Yerushalayim. When he was in Yerushalayim, that's when he wrote the Or Chaim, which means the light of life. Okay. So he says that the Hebrew word for wheat, which is chita, has the numerical value of 22. So ches is 8, tes is 9, and hey is 5. So he mentions the connection that every Torah scroll is written using the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So there's a connection between wheat, chita, and the letters 22 of the alphabet that were used to write our Holy Torah. Okay? And I'm going to read a little bit from the Or Chaim right now. It says, all foods at the deepest, most elemental level are nourished from the sanctity of the Torah. From the time that Adam damaged the world, a portion of the raw, or the bad, became mixed into all foods. For this reason, wheat now has stubble and chaff that are discarded, and for this reason, God commanded us not to eat certain foods that can damage our souls. Wow. So he just basically explains the reason for keeping kosher. I mean, the reason really is that we do it because God said so, but this is like a very deep interior thing that he's saying here, and it's just, it blows my mind. It says, so from the Or Chaim we learn that in a realm that most of us are totally unaware of, there's a deep connection between Torah, where there is light, or, and food. Even King David himself wrote in Tehillim, in Psalm 40, verse 9, to fulfill your will, my God, this is what I have desired, and your Torah is in my innermost organs. When one is vigilant, this is again from the Or Chaim, when one is vigilant not to eat forbidden foods, his inner longing for spirituality will grow stronger. This is what King David was alluding to when he said, to fulfill your will, my God, this is what I have desired. David was referring to his desire to be careful with God's dietary laws. And in that way, we finish the verse, your Torah is in my innermost organs. Wow. So when eaten properly, the very food that we eat has the ability to infuse our entire self, our heart, our soul, our body, our mind, everything with Torah. And the darkness that descended upon mankind, the gray area, the toil and the suffering that descended upon the world when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit of that tree of knowledge of good and evil, it can be displaced and repaired by the light of Torah through eating. So we broke it with food, we can fix it with food. Does that make sense? I hope so. It's a very, very crazy, hard, Kabbalistic, deep thing to try to understand. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about tikkun. And that's, again, it means repair. It's a Hebrew word for repair. Okay. Okay, there are two kinds of foods in the world. There's food that's totally raw, totally bad, and it's so polluted that we are not allowed to eat it. Whatever light is locked in this food can only be liberated and can only be actualized by our staying away from it. Again, that's a very hard thing to understand, but if you look at it in the context of fixing what was broken back in the Garden of Eden, fixing what was broken with food. If they had stayed away from the food, everything would still be easy, would still be on easy street, you know? Our food would be provided for us, cooked by angels, the most amazing food in the most beautiful surroundings. But if we don't eat the forbidden foods, we can, and we do, and we will fix what was broken in the Garden of Eden. Do you understand what a gigantic spiritual responsibility that is? That's like saying, hey Jews, I know you're tempted to eat this crab, but if you eat the crab, it's like you're going back to the Garden of Eden, and you're messing it all up again. But if you don't eat the crab, if you don't eat the forbidden food, if the bacon, which smells amazing, and you just want to rip into it, and you're starving, and you're in the store, and you can smell that bacon, if you stay away from it, you're fixing the world, and you're taking it back to that previous paradisical glory. It's amazing. Okay. So there's another kind of food, and that contains both tov, which is good, and ra, which is bad. They have the potential to be infused and elevated with even more tov and even more or. And in that way, we make a positive tikkun. And how do we do that with these foods? he gives us 4 steps. First of all, eating kosher food. The very fact that we choose kosher food over non-kosher food, and that we eat it in accordance with the teachings of the Torah, is a tikkun in and of itself. That in and of itself is fixing the wrongs that were done. Please stop writing on the furniture. Kavana is number 2. Kavana means almost like, well, it's very hard to describe, but almost like concentration. Eating with directed consciousness. Eating for the sake of being a better spiritual person. Eating for the sake that you'll have strength to do the mitzvahs. Eating for the strength that you will have health to go out and take care of your children, to teach them the ways of Torah, to take care of another person who's hurting or in a bad place. Eating so that you can share a meal with another person who may be sad, who may be downtrodden. This is fixing all of this. Okay. Saying a bracha before you eat. Saying a blessing before you eat. It's another tikkun. And I want to cover brachas hopefully next week. It depends on how far we get today. Okay? That's the third one. And the fourth one is the study of Torah. Discussing Jewish texts at a meal. Benching at a meal. Talking about any Torah at a meal. In this way, you are not only rectifying what was destroyed by eating of that fruit in the Garden of Eden, but you are elevating your table, which is a symbol today, and actually it always has been a symbol of the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. We turn our table into an altar when we do these things. We eat kosher food. We eat with kavana. We eat with the concentration that we're using it to be able to perform more mitzvahs. We say a bracha over the food, and we discuss words of Torah. We're elevating our table. This thing that I got at Target for, $40. I'm taking it from that, and I'm raising it up to the level of the altar in the Beis HaMikdash. Do you understand how huge that is? My husband's bringing up another point. Singing Zemiras. Singing holy songs by the table. Okay. So he brings down this amazing Hasidic story about a Rebbe who was going to make a bracha. So the student came to his Rebbe and he said, we both make blessings on an apple. I don't see what the difference, where is it different between us? How are you the Rebbe and I'm the student? We both make the same bracha on an apple and then we eat it. And the Rebbe says, you make a blessing so that you can eat the apple, but I eat the apple so I can make a blessing. So this is a lesson that we really have to have, is that we need to eat in order to bring spirituality into our lives and into the world and rectify those wrongs. Okay, I'm moving right along. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Kedusha. And he calls this section of the book Kedusha, Holiness Begins in the Kitchen. So, everyone uses the term holiness, and it's been used in so many ways and in so many forms and for so much bad in this world that we're not going to say the word holiness. We're going to call it Kedusha, okay, which is the Hebrew word, because it means so much more. Okay. So the defining event in Jewish history is when, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah on Mount Sinai. And he says in Exodus 19:5-6, at the giving of the Torah, it says, "And you will have a relationship with me that is unique and distinct from all other nations. You will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." So he says Kadosh, kingdom of priests and a Kadosh nation. So the word Kadosh and the word Kedusha have the same root meaning. So it means that Kedusha is gonna fill your life. Okay, so the next little bit he starts to explain how is that going to be. Okay, so he starts talking about the Mikdash. When God finished creating the world, he wasn't quite done. He left the finishing touches of creation to mankind. He now wanted people to build a place for him, to build a world that he could feel comfortable living in, okay? A world that his holy presence could survive. and where it would be comfortable. It's like, when you have a guest over and you make the house so nice for them, you clean it up, you give them the most comfy bed and the best pillow and the best sheets, and you give them an extra blanket in case they're cold. That's what Hashem wanted us to do spiritually. Okay. He said, and we're in Exodus 25 now, just a few chapters later. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and from everyone who desires, take a donation from me. The donation you take for them will be gold, silver, copper, turquoise, purple, red, wool, linen. And you will make for me a holy mikdash, and my presence will rest among you." The word mikdash, which is a sanctuary, and the word kedusha, or holiness, have the same root meaning. Okay. And the third aspect of this is kadoshim, or be like me. So we're in Leviticus 19, a totally different book now. God spoke to Moses and said, "Speak to the entire assembly of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be kadosh, because I am kadosh, Lord your God." So in this way he was saying, I'm kadosh, and you got to be kadosh. Striving and aspiring for kedusha is a seminal value intended to permeate virtually every aspect of the Jewish life. The collective persona and culture of the Jewish identity is kedusha, is holiness. And that comes straight from the Chumash, people. I don't know how much more of a basic source you can get than that. It's pretty amazing. Okay, Maimonides, I don't know if you guys all know who he is. If you don't, I'm sure you can look it up or read the book. He is a very important Torah scholar. And he wrote an amazing sefer called Mishnah Torah. And one of the volumes in the Mishnah that deals with all of the mitzvahs in the Torah, all of the laws. So one of the volumes is called the Book of Kedusha. What? Okay, I hear. The Book of Kedusha. Okay, now one would think, oh, Kedusha, he must be dealing with the holiest and loftiest things, like the temple in Jerusalem, or holidays, or Shabbat, or the Torah itself. But no, the only three topics he speaks about in this book are kosher foods, kosher sexual relations, and kosher slaughter. That's it. So, what? Wow. By doing this, he is saying that what happens in our kitchens, and what happens in our bedrooms, and what happens out in the stall, in the barn, is really more about holiness than anything else in the world. Now, oftentimes people think of these things, it almost seems counterintuitive that we should think of food, that we should think of the mundane sort of task of preparing food and eating food. Sexuality, which most people which a lot of people in this world unfortunately consider to be dirty or taboo, and the slaughter of animals, which is dirty, bloody, messy business, right? So they think of this sort of spirituality in terms of a dichotomy that places the two at opposite ends of the spectrum. So that the more one embraces the spiritual, the less one is physical. And the reverse is assumed to be true, that the more one embraces the physical, the less spiritual one is. However, Maimonides is telling us in Mishnah Torah, in the Book of Kedusha, that we should consider a view of human beings that sees beyond the mere parameters of physical and spirituality. That they are not polar opposites, but they are partners. That the two not only exist in harmony, but their harmony is essential to kedusha and to living a holy life and to bringing holiness into this world. Okay. I am not sure I'm going to have time to finish all I have to cover, but I'm going to try. Okay. I'll try and go as far as I can. Okay. So he's talking now, he's sort of comparing and contrasting the laws of sexuality and the laws of kosher. He says, nobody wants a relationship with just endless, meaningless one-night stands. Everybody wants to have intimacy and that high level of connection with the person that they love. Everybody wants love. It's just how it is. And it's the same thing. Like, everybody wants to eat. But would you really want to have just like food that didn't taste good, that wasn't fulfilling, and just, you're eating, but it doesn't mean anything? Nobody wants that. So our physicality and our bodies make us dream of the restaurants, and of the romances. 1 minute, sweetheart, okay? I know you're poopy. Just a minute, cutie. But our souls dream of close and loving relationships, of having character and integrity, and of lifting and enriching the lives of others. Okay? So, even though the reality is that our bodies want us to, have just mindless sex, mindless eating, the truth is that our spirit wants something else. And this is where we start to fight. So, what the Rambam or Maimonides wants us to understand is not only are the two mutually exclusive, not only are the two not mutually exclusive, but spirituality and holiness are to be found, not just in the Beis HaMikdash, not just on Shabbos, but in the places that we think about them that they must be the least, that it would seem like they would be the least, in our kitchen and in our bedrooms. Amazing. It's just amazing. This relates back to what, Sarah Yocheved Rigler said about bringing Kedusha, making this world into Kedusha. Not bringing Kedusha into the world, but making this world holy. Okay. So the creation paradigm he brings up next, and he says that, Hashem not only created, he didn't just create objects and this and that and the other thing. He created potential for existence. In the beginning was ultimate potential, and from within that potential, everything else was formed and revealed. People and things, plants grow up, children grow up, personalities evolve, nations evolve, nations progress. Basically, progress is the name of the game. Hashem created it, and now there's this, and within it is the innate potential to be amazing. Okay, we're all born cute, delicious, ready for whatever, and we have to progress from there. We could go up or we could go down. The challenge of life is to grow and to realize our Kedusha and to actualize it. Because if you're not doing that, you're going. My rabbi always says to me, it's like a donkey cart stuck in the mud on a hill. If you're not moving forward a little bit, you're sliding back. There's no such thing as staying the same. You got to either move forward a little bit. Even if you're moving forward a little bit and you're sliding back, you still got to keep moving forward. Because if you're standing still, you're just going to fall. Okay, so he relates sort of the potential of creation in two terms: planting and building. He planted within the world great potential, and then he built something out of it. So same thing. To plant and build oneself is to create, I'm quoting from the book here. To plant and build oneself is to create, raise, and nurture a person who looks beyond oneself for the values, the order, life, and who pursues goodness, meaning, and kedusha in endeavors that go beyond the narrow confines of self-gratification. Okay. And I'm going to quote again from this book because he just brings it down so nice. Planting is about values and perspectives that are the seeds of spiritual or kedusha-filled living. The values and perspectives that we surround ourselves with and that inform our choices slowly and steadily seep into the deepest recesses of our being. It's a process. It's growing. It's always happening. It's always going forward. Okay. We build by putting new bricks or new behavioral routines into our daily lives. And we also build by taking out old worn bricks, behavioral habits that are not healthy, are not constructive. So Planting cultivates human spirituality. It's a cognitive process, it's an attitude process. Building constructs spiritual living through behavioral change. So we have to use both approaches. Okay, so in the next section, he speaks about Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who wrote the book Mesilat Yesharim, which is The Path of the Just. If you've never read it, it's a very slim volume. I actually read it during one of my short hospital stays after having one of my babies, and it's mind-boggling. It's crazy. It'll expand your mind, but it's really incredible. And he basically outlines, what does he do in this book? He just outlines how to grow and how to achieve ultimate spirituality. Okay, so here we go. He's breaking it down at a very basic level of how to achieve Kedusha, in a three-part sort of system. And within each of those parts, he does a planting and a building. So the level one is separation. We all have the natural inclination to have pleasure for pleasure's sake. But the problem is that the pleasure is short-lived, and too much of it is bad for you. So there's nothing wrong with liking food. There's nothing wrong with getting pleasure out of food. And in fact, the Talmud says that we will be asked when we, appear before the heavenly tribunal, why we didn't take advantage of any pleasurable food that we saw and didn't eat. And again, that's a permissible food, pleasurable food. But the issue is not becoming so enthralled or entertained with food that you forget that you're eating to live, not living to eat. Okay? And so so that's the planting. The building process is you eat only when you're hungry and eat a little bit less than is necessary to satisfy your hunger. More easily said than done. Okay, level 2 is purity. So we have to believe that the motivation and we have to have the motivation to eat purely for the sake of strength to do more mitzvahs. If we're eating and we're having a meal with a friend, maybe they're downtrodden, maybe they're having a bad day, but we gave them a sandwich and we're sitting there and we're eating with them or we're talking, we're uplifting that person. We're eating for a purpose. So you need to have the motivation be in your, the desire to be healthy, energized, strong, and a clear mind, and not just the desire for oh, this Thai food looks really yummy. And although that's fine, you could totally eat, but the higher purpose is the desire to live as meaningful a life as possible, and you have to have food to make the fuel to do that. Okay? So what's the building aspect of this? You need to reflect on the values and the ideals that are at the core of life. You need to feel a sense of mission that's so palpable that when the pleasure of food, when food that tastes good and feels good and is amazingly delicious and yummy, it pales when you compare it to the pleasure of having the strength to pursue deeper, richer pleasures. Your Torah is in my innermost organs. I know, sweetie, mommy's coming, okay? Mommy's coming. Okay, level 3 is Kedusha. So planting. When I look at all of, and I'm going to quote from him here because it's really amazing. When I look at all of life as a grand opportunity to connect with God, then food as well as all other physical pleasures become vehicles for bringing God into the world. It's not just about eating. Something deeper. This is where physicality ceases to be any kind of impediment to spirituality and is elevated to the harmonious association or the partnership with Kedusha. So what's the building aspect of this? Whatever we do it with God in mind. We eat with God in mind. We have intimate relations with our partner with God in mind. We drive our cars with God in mind. Are you running to do a mitzvah? I hope so. When this occurs, then the physical world, our meals, our intimate lives, and everything else is transformed from the physical and the mundane to the spiritual and the kodesh. Okay. Now, I only have just a little tiny bit left, and then I will talk about some questions that came up during the week, and I'll open up for questions. So, let me continue. A person whose highest aspirations are physical aspirations is only half a person. Conversely, I mean, in the same sentence and in the same breath, you went potty, big girl. Okay, go in the other room. A person whose reach is for spirituality takes a path that denies and denigrates physicality is also half a person. You got to have both. You have to have the spiritual and the physical together. A whole person, a person of Kedusha, is one who devotes every dimension of life to the highest achievement possible, to making room in his life for God, making a mikdash for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is our aspect. This is how we help in creation. This is what our mission is on earth. Rabbi Shalom Noah Berzovsky has a beautiful quote here. He says, "This can be God's deep desire is that His presence have a place in the physical world. We are without the holy temple right now. We do not have we don't have the holiest of holies where Hashem's presence resided. So where is it? Where is Hashem's presence? And it says here, His presence can have a place in the physical world by relating to God specifically through the physicality of the world. Making your table that you got for $40 at Target into an altar for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Studying by your meals. Singing by your meals. Inviting people who wouldn't otherwise have a meal to your meals. It's our mission to transform this world that we live in into a world that He, the Hashem, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, can also live in. And just as the physical world can be elevated, so can we. So after the laws of kosher are discussed in Leviticus, he concludes the HaKadosh Baruch Hu concludes the discussion saying, "For I am the Lord your God. You should live a life of Kedusha and be Kodesh, for I am Kodesh." When God linked kosher intimacy to Kedusha, He was telling us that to scale the heights of Kedusha, we need to make sure that we take the bedroom and the kitchen along with us. Okay, so that is roughly up to page 104, and then he goes into brachas, and that's 104 to 118, and I would really like to cover that for next week. So there's your reading assignment. Just a minute, cutie. Okay, so real fast before I address the questions that have come up in my conversations with you guys this week. Laser Wolf says, "Beware of Thai and Chinese restaurants. Those people eat dogs. It's no myth." And yes, it's true. That's why we eat in a kosher Thai or Chinese restaurant, where we're assured that there's going to be no dogs and no cats, because we have a Jewish person watching and make sure that it's beef and that it was kosher slaughtered and that everything is to the T. You see how kosher can protect you? That's right, people. Okay. So I had a phone call this week that where someone was saying to me that they didn't buy fish at the fish market, and this person lives in a very remote area where there's hardly any kosher food. They have to special order it, yada yada. And I'm also in that same situation. I thank God I have a store here that stocks stuff regularly, and I have a great co-op system here. But you need to realize that not everybody's in that situation. And one of the best ways that you can feed your family and yourself is to go with fresh fish. Okay? If it is, and I'm going to just give a preface to this conversation by saying that my rabbi and Rebetzin always told me it's more important that you know what you can do than what you can't do. Because if you know what you can do, it won't be so extreme and it won't be so hard. So you can eat fresh fish from any market as long as it's readily discernible that it has fins and scales. You're golden. And again, we spoke about they have to be the kind of scales that can be scraped off. Eels have scales, but you can't scrape them off without doing damage to the skin. It can't be that kind. So if you see a gorgeous side of salmon at the store and it has skin on it, has scales, you're golden. You're good. My husband and I often go to Whole Foods fish market, the fish market in Whole Foods here, and we will take our own knife. And we've explained to them we have dietary issues and we just need you to cooperate with us a little bit, please. and they are happy to fillet any whole fish for us. They put down a piece of wax paper. We have our fish knife, and it's good and sharp. So I highly recommend. One of the questions that came up was, can I eat this fish if it's right next to a tray fish? Like if it's in a display case, like right next to and or touching the shrimp. And the answer is, if you can sturgeon, not kosher. If you can discern that it has scales that can be removed and fins, then you can eat it, even if it's in the display case touching the shrimp. Now, I'm assuming that in the display case, it's cold in there, okay? And I'm also assuming that you're going to bring it home and rinse it off. It's a good idea to not have the piece that's directly touching the shrimp, but if it's next to it, it's fine, as long as it's cold, as long as it has fins and scales, and you can determine that, you can eat it. And if you need it to be filleted, bring your own knife. A lot of places are really, they don't care. They're just happy to sell you the fish. So make sure that you ask questions and you stay communicating with your fish person. And that was the question that came up this week, and I hope that was informative for you guys. Now, does anybody have a question real quick? I have 6 minutes before my friend Roger's class, the No Hide Side, and I hope you guys will stay around for that from 9 to 10. Anybody have any questions? I'll open it up. And while I'm opening it up for questions, I'm actually going to type in my email address. And you can Facebook me, of course, also. But you have to send me a message on Facebook that you want to be my friend, because I've had some serious hacking issues. So I'm really careful about who I'm friends with. So just send me a message that you're from the kosher class, and I'm happy to be there. Okay. Laser Wolf asks, is suitable for vegetarians is written on a product, is it kosher by default? No. I would not eat something that says suitable for vegetarians, and there are reasons why. And actually, Apisdorf outlines this in the book very brilliantly. There are non-kosher ingredients that are in food dyes, that are in oils, that are in a lot of different processing products that we don't even know about. And that's why when the OU puts their stamp on it, we know it's kosher, because it means it went through the rigorous process of the mashgiach, the rabbi, looking at every aspect of the ingredients and every aspect of the processing and saying, yeah, that's kosher. If you're stuck in a bind, it's okay. You read the ingredients, but even the ingredients, you can't really count on them 100%, because there's dyes and there's all sorts of other stuff that has that the FDA doesn't require them to state has non-kosher ingredients in it, but it might have non-kosher ingredients. So I would really stick with only eating something that had a reliable hechsher on it. Any other questions? How could a bag of chips or nachos be treif? Very easily, Laser Wolf. Very easily. There's a great article in Mishpacha magazine from a few years ago, and I bet if you go online to Mishpacha, you can find it, about how they process potato chips. A lot of those potato chips are fried in oil that is not 100% vegetable oil, that has some lard in it. Some of the flavorings may have non-kosher ingredients in it, like shellfish. It's very, very, very easy for it to be non-kosher. And one of the famous examples is like Doritos. Like, what could be in those that isn't kosher? Well, a lot of stuff. They actually use flavorings that have, non-kosher ingredients in it, the shellfish and so on and so forth. So if it's got a hechsher, you're golden. There's a lot of Lay's. I think every single one of the Dirty brand chips is kosher. I think a lot of Utz, if you have that brand in your hometown, those are all kosher. Pretty much anything, 90% of the stuff you can find at the gas station is kosher, but you stay away from Doritos and stay away from some of the Lay's products, like some of their barbecues, not so good. The kettle cooked ones are fine. But the regular barbecue chips, you can't have. Coca-Cola is always kosher. It has an OU on it always. You can even, go to McDonald's and get just a cup of Coca-Cola. But again, that deals with Marasign, which I talked about in my previous classes. So enjoy Coca-Cola at your leisure. Any other questions? I'm going to give like 2 more seconds for questions. I'm going to talk to my husband for a second. The baby had a gigantic poopy diaper and took it off, and I don't know where it is because I've been trying to give a class, and you weren't here. I'm going to give this to you. Oh, you are? But Noah Hyde's side is on. Isn't that Roger? Oh. Okay, well, my husband just informed me that he's going to give the Noah Hyde side class. Oh, no, it says Reverend Gratton from Israel is having difficulty with video. Please be patient for a few moments after the Rebetzin class. Oh, he is giving the class? Yep. So. Oh, okay. Judah, mushrooms are kosher. Any produce that you have is kosher. Just be careful and look for bugs. If it's a visible bug, if you could see it, even if it's very tiny, if it's visible to the naked eye, that is not kosher. If you eat one tiny little bug that's visible to the naked eye, it's like you ate an entire side of bacon. But other than that, fresh produce is kosher. Yeah, and be careful with produce from Israel, which I spoke about in a previous class, because there are special kosher laws that govern food from Israel. They have to be tithed, and it's very complicated. So be careful with food from Israel. I personally, if you live in the United States or Canada, I would not eat produce from Israel just because of the kosher laws, and unfortunately are not so obeyed over there. But yeah, any domestic produce that's not from Israel, it's fine. Organic broccoli, Mia, is totally fine. Just make sure. I'm really, really nervous about broccoli and cauliflower because they have the tops, the nubs and stuff. You have to really, really pull those apart and make sure that you get the bugs inside. I am so paranoid about bugs that when I eat produce, I really only eat broccoli and cauliflower. You can get broccoli and cauliflower that is sort of hydroponically grown in a greenhouse that's free of bugs, and it doesn't have pesticides on it or anything, and it's observed by a rabbi. It's very expensive. You get it from Israel, but plain organic broccoli, no problem. Just check it for bugs. Sliced mushrooms, that's a good question. Sliced mushrooms are okay. I personally do not eat them because I don't know what knife has touched them. You have to be careful with knives when it comes to things with a sharp taste. So onions, shallots, scallions, citrus fruits, those kind of things, you have to be careful with the knives. A lot of sliced mushrooms already have a hechsher, so just check because it might already have a hechsher. Otherwise, you could put a little bit of work into it. You guys are all welcome. You're so welcome for the class. I'm going to sign off so that my friend Roger can sign on. If you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to email me or Facebook me. Put that up again. And I hope you all have a great, happy, healthy, and kosher week. Thank you. Bye-bye.